Ethan Carter had always been proud of the bakery chain he built from the ground up. It had started as a small family business, with just one cozy little shop on a quiet street. Over the years, it had grown into a well-known brand with multiple locations across the city. People loved the fresh bread, delicious pastries, and warm atmosphere. But as the company expanded, Ethan had less time to visit the stores himself. He relied on reports from managers and executives to keep track of how things were running. Recently, though, something had been bothering him. While the reports always painted a perfect picture, he had noticed a few negative reviews online from employees. Some complained about long hours, unfair treatment, and a stressful work environment. Ethan couldn't ignore it. If something was wrong in his company, he needed to find out the truth himself. That's when he came up with an idea. He would go undercover as a new employee. If he walked in as the CEO, everyone would act differently. But if he went as a regular worker, he would see things as they really were. So with the help of his assistant, he created a fake identity. He changed his hairstyle, wore casual clothes, and even put on a pair of glasses to look different. His name for the day would be Eric. The next morning, Ethan arrived at one of his most successful bakery locations. As he stepped inside, the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Customers were chatting happily while sipping coffee, and the display cases were full of delicious treats. Everything looked perfect on the surface. A tall man in his 40s, who seemed to be the store manager, approached him with a clipboard. "You must be Eric, the new guy," he said, not even looking up. "We don't have time for slow learners, so keep up." His tone was strict, almost cold. Ethan nodded, keeping his cover. He was quickly put to work, stacking trays and refilling supplies. The tasks were simple, but he noticed something strange. None of the employees looked happy. They worked fast, almost as if they were afraid of making a mistake. The manager, Greg, gave orders without a smile, and no one dared to talk back. As the hours passed, Ethan felt a growing unease. This was not the friendly, welcoming environment he had imagined for his business. Something was wrong here. He decided to stay quiet and observe, waiting for the right moment to understand what was really going on. Then, as he carried a tray to the back storage area, he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A soft, muffled sob. Someone was crying. Ethan turned the corner and saw a young woman sitting near the storage shelves, her face buried in her hands. She was clearly upset, but why? Ethan stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Whatever was happening here, he knew one thing for sure: this was not just another workday. Something deeper was going on, and he was about to uncover the truth. Ethan stood still, unsure of how to approach the situation. The young woman, who was probably in her early 20s, was sitting on the floor near a shelf in the back room. Her shoulders shook slightly as she wiped away tears. Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. He knew he had to act quickly, but he didn't want to reveal who he really was just yet. Slowly, he walked toward her and crouched down, trying to appear friendly and non-threatening. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. The woman looked up at him, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She blinked a few times, clearly startled by the unexpected question. For a brief moment, it looked like she might ignore him, but then her expression softened, and she spoke in a shaky voice. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make a scene." "I'll be fine," she said quickly, wiping her eyes. Her voice cracked a little as she tried to hold herself together. Ethan wasn't convinced. Something deeper was going on, and he could tell she was struggling. "It's okay," he reassured her gently. "You don't have to hide it. What's going on?" She hesitated for a moment, glancing around nervously as though making sure no one else was listening. "It's just work," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been doing everything I can, but it's never enough. I feel like I'm always messing up, and nothing I do is right." Ethan's heart sank. He had always known running a business required hard work, but he had never imagined it would get to this point. Someone breaking down in tears in the back of his own bakery. "What do you mean?" "Is it your manager?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The woman nodded slowly, looking away as if ashamed to speak. "It's Greg, the manager. He's been pushing us too hard. He always has something negative to say. And if you make even a small mistake, he's on your back. It's like nothing is ever good enough for him. I've been staying late almost every night to catch up, but it still feels like I'm falling behind." Ethan listened carefully, trying to take in everything she was saying. It was clear that Maria, he had learned her name by now, was overwhelmed. She had a soft, gentle nature, but she was being crushed under the weight of too many expectations. "That sounds tough," Ethan said, trying to offer some comfort. "You shouldn't have to go through this. No one should." Maria looked up at him, and for a moment, he could see a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I don't know what else to do. I can't leave this job. I have a daughter to take care of, and this is the only income I have. But I'm exhausted, and I'm scared." Ethan felt a wave of anger rise inside him, though he kept his emotions in check. This wasn't just about a stressful work environment. Maria was trapped, forced to keep pushing herself to the limit because she had no other option. Her tears weren't just about the job. They were about the life she was struggling to make work. Before Ethan could say anything else, the sound of footsteps approaching startled both of them. Maria quickly wiped her face and stood up, trying to act as if nothing had happened. But Ethan saw the lingering sadness in her eyes. He knew he couldn't let this go. As Greg appeared at the door, giving a quick glance toward the back room, Ethan instinctively stepped away from Maria. Greg didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary, but Ethan could feel the tension in the air. Whatever was going on behind the scenes at this bakery, he knew one thing. It was time to dig deeper. Ethan watched as Greg walked past them, not sparing them a second glance. Maria quickly straightened herself up, trying to get back to work as if nothing had happened. She gave Ethan a nervous smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. He could see the sadness still lingering there, but he didn't push her any further at that moment. Instead, he continued working, but his mind was focused on everything Maria had just shared. It didn't sit well with him. He had built this company with the hope of creating something people would enjoy, something that would bring people together. Yet in this bakery, it felt as though the very people who made the business run were being overlooked and mistreated. As the hours went on, Ethan kept his head down, doing his best to blend in and act like a regular employee. But he couldn't stop thinking about what he had learned. He noticed more and more signs of stress among the other employees. They rushed to finish their tasks, barely looking up at each other, their faces tense. There was no laughter, no sense of camaraderie. It was all work and not much else. At one point, Ethan saw another employee, a young man named Jack, drop a tray of pastries. It was a simple mistake, nothing major. But the way Greg reacted made Ethan's blood run cold. "Jack, what's wrong with you?" Greg snapped, his voice loud and harsh. "You can't even carry a tray properly. You're making this place look bad." Jack, already looking stressed, stood frozen for a moment, his face flushed with embarrassment. He muttered an apology under his breath and quickly tried to clean up the mess, but it was clear to Ethan that the damage had been done. Jack looked defeated, and Ethan saw the fear in his eyes. It was the same fear Maria had in hers. Ethan couldn't help but feel a deep frustration growing inside him. This wasn't the kind of environment he had envisioned for his bakery. People weren't supposed to be afraid of making mistakes. They were supposed to feel like they could grow, that they had a chance to improve without fear of being punished for every little error. As the day went on, Ethan tried to talk to a few more employees during short breaks. They were all polite, but when he asked about how things were going, their answers were always the same. "It's fine. I'm doing okay." Or "just another day." They didn't seem willing to open up, and Ethan couldn't tell if it was because they didn't want to get in trouble or if they were just used to the way things were. But then, near the end of his shift, he overheard a conversation between two employees in the break room. One of them, a woman named Anna, was talking to a friend about how she had been working overtime for weeks without any extra pay. She mentioned that Greg had promised her a raise, but it had never come through. It wasn't the first time he had made promises he didn't keep, and Anna was starting to feel discouraged. Ethan's heart sank as he listened. It was more than just unfair treatment. This was a pattern. Greg had been making empty promises, taking advantage of his employees' hard work without giving anything back. Ethan had hoped that the negative reviews had been exaggerated, but now he knew they weren't. This wasn't just about 1 or 2 bad days. This was a serious problem. By the time his shift was over, Ethan had seen enough. He knew that the bakery couldn't continue like this. There was no way he could go home and forget what he had witnessed today. His employees were struggling, and he had to do something about it. Ethan was more determined than ever to fix things. He couldn't change everything overnight, but he knew it was time to make a real difference. As he left the bakery that evening, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Maria, Jack, Anna, and all the others who were silently suffering. He promised himself that tomorrow, things would start to change. The next morning, Ethan returned to the bakery, but this time, he was ready for action. He had spent the night reflecting on what he had seen and heard. He couldn't shake the image of Maria, her tear-filled eyes, or the defeated look on Jack's face. He knew something had to change. Ethan had spent years building his company, and he had always been proud of the reputation they had earned. But now, he realized that reputation meant nothing if his employees weren't treated with respect and care. As he walked through the front door, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bakery seemed like the same warm, welcoming place he had seen the day before. Customers were enjoying their coffee, chatting with each other, and picking out pastries. But underneath the surface, he knew there was a deeper issue that needed to be addressed. Ethan made his way to the back, where the employees were busy preparing for the day. Maria was already there, working quietly, her eyes focused on the task at hand. She didn't look up when Ethan entered, but he could tell she was still carrying the weight of what had happened the day before. He walked over to her and, in a calm voice, asked, "How are you doing today?" Maria looked up, startled, and then gave him a weak smile. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, as though she didn't want to bother anyone with her problems. But Ethan could see right through her. She had tried to hide her feelings, but he knew the truth. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said gently. "I saw what happened yesterday, and I'm sorry you've been dealing with that." Maria blinked in surprise, clearly not expecting him to remember or care. I didn't think anyone noticed," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "I noticed, and I want you to know that I'm going to make sure things change around here. You don't deserve to be treated that way." Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. "But what can you do? It's just the way things are. Everyone here has been dealing with it for so long. It's not like anything is going to change." Ethan felt a surge of determination. "That's exactly why I'm here. Things will change. I've seen the way Greg has been treating you all. And it's not right. No one should have to feel this way while they're at work." Maria stared at him for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I hope you're right," she said quietly. "I just don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." Ethan understood. He had seen the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she had been carrying so much without anyone offering support. He could tell she loved her job, but it was being overshadowed by the constant pressure and lack of respect. It wasn't just about unfair treatment. It was about a work culture that was tearing people down, rather than lifting them up. Determined to do the right thing, Ethan went straight to Greg's office. Greg was sitting behind his desk, looking through paperwork. He didn't seem surprised when Ethan walked in, but there was a noticeable tension in the air. "Greg, I need to talk to you," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. Greg looked up, raising an eyebrow. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone indifferent. Ethan sat down across from him. "I've been working here undercover for the past couple of days, and I've seen how you've been treating the employees." Greg's face hardened, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What are you talking about? I'm just doing my job." Ethan shook his head. "No, Greg, you're not just doing your job. You're creating a toxic environment, and it's affecting everyone here. I've seen employees afraid to make mistakes. I've seen people working long hours without proper support or recognition. This needs to change." Greg scoffed. "I'm just making sure things run smoothly. We can't afford to be soft with people." Ethan didn't back down. "Running smoothly doesn't mean breaking people down. I don't care about being soft, I care about creating a workplace where people feel valued and respected. And right now, that's not happening." The tension in the room was thick. Ethan could see that Greg wasn't used to being challenged, and he wasn't happy about it. But Ethan wasn't going to let this slide. "You're fired, Greg," Ethan said quietly but firmly. Greg's jaw dropped, and for the first time, he looked genuinely shocked. "You can't do that. I've been with this company for years." Ethan stood up, his voice steady. "I can, and I just did. You've been treating people horribly, and I'm not going to allow that to continue in my company. You're done here." As Greg left the office, fuming and red-faced, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. It was a difficult decision, but it was the right one. He had already seen how this store could thrive under better leadership, and now it was time to start making things right for everyone who worked there. The air in the bakery felt different after Greg left. For the first time, there was a sense of possibility, as if a weight had been lifted from everyone's shoulders. The staff, still a bit shocked by what had just happened, began to relax ever so slightly. Ethan knew it wasn't going to be an immediate fix. People wouldn't suddenly feel safe and happy just because Greg was gone. It would take time, but it was a start. The first thing Ethan did was talk to the employees. He gathered them in the back room and introduced himself as the CEO, something none of them had realized the day before. It was a bit of a shock for everyone, but Ethan wasn't looking for surprises or admiration. He simply wanted to be honest with them. "I know I'm not the face you see every day, but I want you to understand something," he began, his voice calm yet firm. "I'm here because I care about this company, and I care about all of you. The way you've been treated recently isn't acceptable, and I'm committed to changing that. From today on, we're going to work together to make this a place where you feel valued and respected." For a moment, no one spoke. The room was silent, as though they weren't sure if they could trust him yet. Ethan could see the doubt in their eyes. They had heard promises before, but those promises had never materialized into real change. Maria, who had been sitting quietly in the back, finally spoke up. "But how? We've been through this before. We've been told things would get better, and then they never did." Her voice was filled with frustration, but there was also a glimmer of hope. Ethan nodded, understanding her concern. "I know you've been let down in the past, and I'm sorry for that. But I promise you, this time is different. We're going to take real steps to make sure you're treated fairly. I'm going to start by making sure everyone here gets proper compensation for their work, including overtime. No more working long hours without pay." The employees looked at each other, surprised. That was a big promise, but Ethan wasn't finished yet. "I'm also going to make sure you all have a voice. I've already set up a way for you to share any concerns or suggestions anonymously, so you never have to feel afraid to speak up again. And we're going to improve the way we train and support you, so that everyone can grow in their roles without fear of making mistakes." The room grew quieter as they absorbed his words. Ethan could see that some of them were still skeptical, but others were beginning to believe in what he was saying. This wasn't just a speech, it was a commitment. He meant every word. "I know it's going to take time to rebuild trust," Ethan continued. "But I want to make it clear, you are all the heart of this company. Without you, there is no bakery, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you feel that every single day you come to work." There was a long pause before Jack, the young man who had dropped the tray the day before, spoke up. His voice was quieter than usual, but there was a hint of relief in it. "Are you really going to make sure we get the support we need?" Ethan smiled, nodding. "Absolutely. I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm here to make things right." Maria, who had been listening intently, finally stood up. She had a look of cautious optimism on her face. "I think we can do this. I think we can make this place better. But we need your help, too. We need your support, not just as the CEO, but as someone who cares about us." Ethan felt a wave of gratitude toward her. "And you'll have it. I'm here for you, and I'm going to make sure you never feel like you're on your own again." Over the next few days, Ethan worked closely with the team to implement the changes he had promised. He began by setting up proper training for new hires, making sure every employee had the tools they needed to succeed without unnecessary pressure. He also met with the store's head baker to ensure they could streamline the workload to prevent burnout. Maria was given a chance to step up and take on more responsibility, something she had always dreamed of. She worked closely with Ethan to develop new ways to improve employee morale and foster a positive atmosphere in the bakery. Her confidence grew as she realized that her hard work and dedication were being recognized and rewarded. Jack, too, felt a shift in the way he was treated. No longer afraid of making mistakes, he began to take on more challenging tasks and even offered suggestions on how to improve the efficiency of their processes. He felt empowered for the first time in a long while. As for the other employees, they began to speak more openly, offering their thoughts on how to make the bakery a better place to work. The environment was starting to change, slowly but surely. As the days passed, the bakery began to transform in ways Ethan hadn't expected. The changes were small at first, but they were undeniable. The staff were no longer just going through the motions. There was a renewed sense of energy in the air, a feeling of hope. For the first time in a long while, the employees were genuinely excited to come to work. Ethan had implemented the new systems for feedback and support, and it wasn't just empty talk. Employees were actively using the new channels to share ideas, ask for help, or simply express their thoughts. It was clear that they were starting to feel like they had a voice, and even though it was a work in progress, there was a growing sense that things were finally headed in the right direction. Maria was leading the charge in many ways. She had quickly become an unofficial leader within the team, offering guidance and support to the newer staff members. Her confidence had blossomed as she took on more responsibility, and as she worked side by side with Ethan, they developed new ways to improve not just the bakery's operations, but the overall work environment. One afternoon, as Ethan walked through the kitchen, he overheard a conversation between Maria and another employee. The tone of their voices was light, and there was laughter. Maria was telling a funny story about a mishap during one of the baking shifts, and for the first time in a while, it felt like the bakery was a place of community instead of stress. "Looks like things are getting better," Ethan thought to himself with a small smile. But it wasn't just the atmosphere that was changing. The customers were noticing the difference too. As the team became more engaged and motivated, the quality of the bakery's products improved as well. There was more attention to detail, more care put into every batch of pastries, and a renewed sense of pride in the work they did. Ethan watched as customers walked into the bakery with smiles, chatting with the staff, and enjoying their treats. Some even took the time to compliment the employees on how friendly and helpful they had become. It was a far cry from the cold, rushed environment it had been just a few weeks earlier. But even though the improvements were clear, Ethan knew they weren't done yet. There was still a lot of work to do. He had promised to create an environment where everyone felt valued, but that wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. Every day, he had to show the team that he was there for them, that he was invested in their well-being, and that their hard work was truly appreciated. One morning, Maria approached Ethan with an idea she had been thinking about for a while. She had noticed that many of the employees were starting to get more comfortable with the changes, but there was still a lingering fear of making mistakes. Some staff members were hesitant to take on new challenges because they worried about being criticized. "What if we started a weekly meeting?" just to talk about how things are going. Maria suggested, it doesn't have to be formal, but it could be a space where everyone can share their thoughts, ask questions, or even discuss things that went wrong without fear of judgment. Ethan loved the idea. It would give everyone a chance to open up, but also create a safe environment where they could learn from their mistakes and grow as a team. He immediately supported the idea and even offered to help organize the first meeting. As the weeks went by, those meetings became a regular part of the bakery's rhythm. Employees looked forward to them, not because they were forced to attend, but because they felt heard and understood. It wasn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It was about learning together, supporting each other, and finding solutions as a team. Through these meetings, Ethan also learned more about his employees than he ever had before. He heard about their aspirations, their challenges, and their dreams outside of the bakery. It was clear that the staff weren't just there to do a job. They cared deeply about the work they did, and they wanted to be part of something bigger. This gave Ethan a sense of purpose beyond just running a successful business. He wasn't just leading a bakery. He was helping to create an environment where people could thrive. But despite the growing positivity, Ethan knew there would still be challenges. Not everyone would be happy with the changes, and not every day would be perfect. But he was prepared to face those challenges head-on. The journey toward creating a truly supportive workplace was ongoing, but it was a journey that Ethan was committed to seeing through. And as he stood in the middle of the bustling bakery one afternoon, watching his team work together with a newfound sense of purpose, Ethan knew one thing for certain: they were on the right path. Ethan's commitment to making the bakery a better place to work was starting to show clear results. The employees were no longer just following orders out of fear. They were working together, collaborating, and even coming up with creative ideas to improve the business. Ethan watched as the changes unfolded before him, proud of how far they had come. One morning, as he walked into the bakery, he noticed that things felt even more upbeat than usual. The employees were chatting and laughing as they worked. Even Jack, who had been so nervous just a few weeks ago, was joking around with the others. The atmosphere had transformed into one of teamwork and mutual respect, and it was impossible for Ethan to ignore the sense of pride that filled the air. The employees were finally working not just for the company, but for each other. Maria had become a key figure in the bakery's success. Her leadership had earned her the respect of her colleagues, and she had taken it upon herself to mentor some of the newer employees. She encouraged them to ask questions, learn from their mistakes, and never be afraid to ask for help. Maria's growth as a leader had been one of the most encouraging signs of the changes Ethan had hoped for. She was no longer just a worker. She was now a trusted team member, helping shape the bakery into the kind of place where people could grow and thrive. Ethan had been making it a point to spend more time with the employees, listening to their concerns and learning about their experiences. He wanted to know what they needed and how he could continue to improve the work environment. One day, during a casual conversation with Anna, one of the other longtime employees, she brought up an idea that Ethan was particularly excited about. "I was thinking," Anna said, looking a little hesitant, "maybe we could hold a customer appreciation event. You know, something to bring in more business, but also show our regular customers how much we appreciate them. We could do a special deal on the pastries or offer free samples for the day." Ethan's eyes lit up as he heard the idea. It was exactly the kind of initiative he had been hoping for. It not only allowed the team to get involved in something creative, but it also allowed them to connect with their customers in a more personal way. "That's a fantastic idea," Ethan said, smiling at Anna. "Let's make it happen. I think our customers would really appreciate it, and it's a great way for all of you to showcase the hard work you've been putting in." The event quickly came together. The staff worked together to come up with a plan for the day, picking out the best pastries to highlight, deciding on pricing, and brainstorming ways to make the event special. They even set up a small area in the bakery where they could chat with customers and gather feedback. It wasn't just about selling pastries. It was about building relationships. When the day of the event finally arrived, the bakery was bustling with energy. The staff worked together, keeping the store organized and making sure customers had everything they needed. Ethan couldn't help but smile as he watched the team in action. The customers were enjoying the free samples and chatting with the staff, many of them commenting on how much friendlier and more welcoming the bakery felt. It was a huge success, not just for the business, but for the team. The event had brought them closer together, and the positive feedback from the customers was a testament to how far they had come. Ethan knew that this event was more than just a promotional opportunity. It was proof that they were on the right track. The employees had taken ownership of the bakery's success, and it was clear they were ready to take on even more responsibility. As the day wound down and the last customer left, Ethan gathered the team together to thank them. "You all did an amazing job today," he said, his voice full of pride. "This event was a success because of your hard work and dedication. I'm proud of everything we've accomplished together." The employees beamed with pride, grateful for the recognition. They had come so far, from a workplace filled with tension and fear to a place where teamwork and respect were at the heart of everything they did. That night, as Ethan headed home, he couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short time. He had taken a risk when he decided to go undercover at his own bakery, but it had been worth it. The bakery was no longer just a business, it was a community. And with each passing day, it was becoming more and more the kind of place where everyone could thrive. Ethan knew that there would still be challenges ahead. There would be setbacks, and some days would be harder than others. But he was confident in the direction they were headed. The bakery had become a place of growth, not just for the business. As weeks passed, Ethan saw more and more positive changes in the bakery. The atmosphere was now filled with warmth, not just from the ovens, but from the relationships that had been built. The employees were no longer just workers, they had become a team, and it was clear to everyone that this was a place where people cared about each other and their work. One morning, as Ethan sat down in the bakery with a coffee, he noticed how much calmer and happier the staff seemed. There was no tension in the air. Instead, people were working with purpose and enjoying their time. Maria, who had grown into a strong leader in the bakery, was chatting with a new employee, showing them how to properly decorate a cake. She was patient and kind, explaining everything step by step. It was incredible to see how much she had grown in such a short time. Ethan knew that Maria was not just an employee. She had become someone who represented the positive changes in the bakery. She had stepped up as a mentor, and that had made a huge difference in the overall work environment. But what pleased Ethan most was seeing how much the employees trusted each other and worked together. They were more than just colleagues. They had become a family. It was around this time that Ethan started to notice something else. The bakery's reputation was improving. Customers who had once been loyal but quiet now started coming in with even more enthusiasm. They didn't just order pastries. They greeted the staff, asked about their day, and were genuinely interested in how things were going at the bakery. Ethan had started receiving emails and messages from regular customers who wanted to thank the team for the changes they had seen. They appreciated the welcoming atmosphere and noticed the difference in the way the staff interacted with them. With this increased customer satisfaction came a growth in business. Sales were steadily rising, and Ethan knew that the improvements in the work environment were a huge part of the reason why. Happy employees meant better service, and better service meant more customers. It was a cycle that continued to build upon itself. Still, Ethan knew that it wasn't just about making money. It was about creating a place where people could thrive, where employees felt valued, respected, and excited to come to work. He felt proud to see his vision of a positive workplace starting to take shape, and he realized that the bakery was no longer just a business for him. It had become a place where he could truly make a difference in people's lives. But Ethan wasn't content to stop there. As the business continued to grow, he thought about ways to keep improving. He didn't want the bakery to become complacent or stagnant. He wanted to continue fostering an environment where employees could advance in their careers and feel fulfilled in their work. He knew there was always more that could be done. One of the first steps Ethan took was to introduce a program that encouraged employees to share their personal growth goals. He wanted to know what they hoped to achieve, both within the bakery and in their lives outside of work. He offered support and resources to help them achieve these goals, whether it was continuing education, leadership training, or just improving their skills in a specific area. The program gave the staff a sense of purpose and direction beyond just completing tasks. They had something to strive for, and that made them even more motivated and engaged. Ethan also set up regular meetings with the team to make sure everyone felt heard. These meetings weren't just about discussing sales or productivity. They were a chance for employees to share their experiences, ask questions, and bring up any concerns they might have. Everyone's voice was valued, and no issue was too small to be addressed. As the bakery's success continued, Ethan's focus remained on the people who made it all possible. He had learned a valuable lesson from his Undercover experience. A successful business is built on trust, respect, and a strong sense of community. Without those things, even the best product wouldn't be enough. One day, as Ethan stood behind the counter, watching the staff interact with customers, he felt a deep sense of pride. He had turned the bakery around, not just by changing systems or implementing new strategies, but by changing the culture. The employees were no longer just doing their jobs. They were taking pride in their work, supporting each other, and creating a positive, welcoming environment for everyone who walked through the door. It had been a journey, a difficult and often challenging journey. But in the end, it was worth it. Ethan had proven that with the right leadership and a commitment to making things better, even the toughest situations could be turned around. As he looked at the smiling faces of his employees and the happy customers, he knew that the bakery was in a place where it could continue to grow.